The most brutal revolvers of the Old West weren't just tools. They were the difference between justice, fame, and a quick death. Legends like John Wesley Hardin and Buffalo Bill staked their lives on weapons notorious for savage stopping power, catastrophic failures, and designs so daring they sometimes exploded in the user's hand. More than 100,000 men armed up with these icons, yet the deadliest of them all are still fiercely debated by collectors and historians. But in a world where every second could end in a gunfight, which revolver truly ruled the frontier? And what made it so fearsome? As we count down the top 10 most Old West brutal revolvers ever made, the truth is far stranger and deadlier than you think. Number 10. Colt 1877 Thunderer. When Colt rolled out its first double-action revolver in 1877, it was a bold move. One that promised faster shooting and a serious edge in a close-quarters fight. Chambered for the .41 long Colt cartridge, this six-shooter was compact enough to hide under a coat, yet packed enough punch to settle scores in a single pull. Over 166,000 Thunderers left the factory, flooding the frontier with a new kind of firepower. But the real story was in the guts of the gun. The Thunderer's double-action clockwork was so delicate, gunsmiths joked it paid for their new boots. A heavy trigger pull made rapid fire tricky, and the intricate internals were known to break at the worst possible moment. Owners carried spare springs in their pockets, just in case. Still, the Thunderer found its way into the hands of legends. John Wesley Hardin, one of the deadliest gunfighters of his day, was said to favor the Thunderer for its speed. Hardin's reputation for accuracy and nerve made him the kind of man who could master a finicky trigger, squeezing off shots when others fumbled. In saloon showdowns and back-alley disputes, every second counted, and the Thunderer's quick draw could mean the difference between walking away or not walking at all. Collectors still hunt for original Thunderers, though most need a gunsmith's touch before they'll fire again. The gamble of speed versus reliability turned the Colt 1877 into both a cautionary tale and a status symbol. It was the revolver for men who lived on the edge, risking a jam for a chance to shoot first. Number 9. Colt 1860 Army. This revolver hit the scene just as the Civil War was heating up and quickly became the sidearm of choice for thousands of Union cavalry troopers. Chambered in .44 caliber, it packed enough power to drop a horse at 50 yards, but was still light enough to carry on a long march. The Army's streamlined frame and curved grip made it easy to draw from a saddle holster, and the rust-resistant finish meant it could survive months of rain, mud, and sweat without turning into a lump of orange iron. Officers wrote home about its elegant lines and how it balanced perfectly in the hand. A big change from the clunky revolvers of just a few years before. But for all its good looks and battlefield reputation, the 1860 Army had a weak spot. The open-top frame, a holdover from earlier Colt designs, could bend under heavy use. After a few hard campaigns, barrels would start to wobble, and some troopers complained in their diaries about having to tighten screws after every fight. Still, when you're riding into a hail of bullets, a revolver that fires true, even if it needs a little extra care, beats being caught empty-handed. Over 129,000 of these were issued to Union soldiers, making it one of the most widely carried handguns of the war. For the men who depended on it, the Colt 1860 Army was more than just a tool. It was a lifeline in the chaos of battle, and a badge of honor that marked them as cavalry. Even today, collectors search for these revolvers, especially those with battle scars and stories etched into their metal, as reminders of a time when survival depended on 6 shots and steady nerves. Number 8. Remington 1858 New Model Army. When Remington introduced this revolver in 1858, it did more than just challenge Colt's grip on the market. It changed the game for anyone who needed a sidearm that wouldn't quit. The secret was in its solid frame, a single piece of steel that gave the revolver an edge in strength and durability. Unlike the open-top Colts, this Remington could take a pounding without the barrel working loose or the frame bending under pressure. Soldiers and frontiersmen started to notice, but what really set it apart was the quick-change cylinder. You could carry a spare, pop out the empty one, and reload in seconds. No tools, no fumbling with caps or loose powder while bullets were flying. In the chaos of battle or a high-stakes card game gone south, that meant the difference between firing again or running for cover. Safety was another big win. Remington's engineers added notches between the chambers. Simple, but brilliant. With the hammer resting in a notch, you could safely carry all 6 chambers loaded, without fear that a bump or drop would set off a round. That kind of peace of mind was rare in the Old West. Over 122,000 new model armies rolled out of Remington's factory, and their reputation spread fast, from the muddy fields of the Civil War to the dusty main streets of cattle towns. Buffalo Bill Cody, the showman who turned Wild West legends into household names, carried a Remington 1858. He didn't just use it, he made it famous. During his stage shows, Cody would gallop across the arena, swapping out loaded cylinders in a flash, firing shot after shot to the crowd's delight. Remington ran with the publicity, plastering Cody's name across advertisements and catalogs. For soldiers, lawmen, and anyone who wanted a revolver that combined brute strength with a dash of showmanship, the Remington 1858 was the clear choice. It wasn't just a tool, it was a statement, and it set the stage for a new kind of rivalry in the world of Old West firepower. Number 7. Colt 1902 Philippine Model. When American troops landed in the steaming jungles of the Philippines at the turn of the 20th century, they needed a sidearm they could trust. One that would fire every time, no matter the weather or the mud. The Army turned to Colt for answers. What came out of Hartford in 1902 was a beast of a revolver, built for the worst conditions a soldier could face. Chambered in .45 Colt, this model was a direct response to the harsh realities of tropical warfare. The standard primers used in military cartridges back then were harder than anything Colt had dealt with before, and the humidity was relentless. So, engineers gave the Philippine model an oversized trigger guard and a trigger pull that felt like dragging a plow through wet clay, over 20 pounds of pressure, just to get a shot off. Letters home from the front lines tell the story. Soldiers wrote about aching fingers and sore wrists after a day's patrol, some even joking that you needed 2 hands to squeeze off a round in double action. But complaints faded when the fighting started. The heavy trigger meant the gun would fire, rain or shine, with no risk of a light strike or jam. Reliability trumped comfort. The big trigger guard allowed for gloved hands, essential when hacking through jungle or scrambling over rocks. And while the recoil was punishing, the .45 Colt cartridge hit hard enough to stop a charging foe in his tracks. The Philippine model wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy to use, but it did what it was built to do: go bang, every single time. For the men who carried it, that was all that mattered. Today, collectors spot these by their unique trigger guard and the stories etched into their battered frames, a reminder of a time when survival meant putting up with a little pain and a lot of grit. Number 6. Remington 1875. When Remington launched this revolver in 1875, they weren't just introducing another 6-shooter, they were throwing down the gauntlet at Colt's feet. The 1875 was built like a tank, with a solid frame that could shrug off dust, mud, and the kind of abuse only frontier life could dish out. It came in several calibers, but most buyers went for the 44, 40, or 45, matching the ammo used in their rifles. This made it a practical choice for ranchers and lawmen alike. But Remington had a bigger target in mind: Colt's chokehold on the market. Only about 25,000 to 30,000 Remington 1875s ever left the factory. Tiny numbers compared to Colt's runaway production. That wasn't for lack of trying. Remington's ads in the 1870s and 1880s were filled with bold claims, calling their revolver tougher, easier to maintain, and less likely to fail in a fight. They even pointed out that the 1875 used fewer screws than the famous Peacemaker, making it less likely to work loose at the worst possible moment. Meanwhile, Colt fired back with price cuts and a barrage of patent lawsuits, trying to keep Remington boxed out of Army contracts and civilian sales alike. Trade journals of the time read like a boxing match. Remington boasting about their revolver's durability, Colt counterpunching with accusations of patent infringement. Buyers were caught in the crossfire, reading headlines that pitted the original against the upstart challenger. For some, the Remington's reputation for reliability won out, especially among those who valued a revolver that could take a beating without breaking down. But the low production numbers meant that, even back then, you were more likely to see a Colt on a cowboy's hip than a Remington. Today, finding an original 1875 in good shape is a rare score for collectors. A reminder of a time when the battle for the West wasn't just fought with guns, but with advertising and legal threats too. Colt's Frontier 6-shooter became the backbone of the open range, prized by ranchers and cowboys for its simple genius. It fired the same 4440 cartridge as the Winchester 1873 rifle. One box of ammo worked for both, a practical solution that meant fewer worries about running dry miles from town. This shared caliber wasn't just a convenience, it was a lifeline. Stories from the era tell of drovers passing cartridges between rifle and revolver during stampedes, or squeezing out the last shots to hold off rustlers at dawn. The Frontier's rugged build and reliability made it a favorite, but it also carried a certain swagger. Early models came with acid-etched barrel markings. Colt Frontier 6-shooter, a detail collectors now chase with near-religious fervor. Most of those etchings wore away through years of hard use, so finding one intact is a rare event, often sparking fierce bidding at auction. Factory engraving, nickel finishes, and documented provenance can send prices soaring, especially when a gun is linked to a famous cattle outfit or lawman. Then there's the Whitneyville Dragoon, a revolver so rare it borders on myth. Only about 240 were ever made, bridging the gap between the massive Colt Walker and later Dragoons. It kept the Walker's long grip but trimmed the cylinder and barrel, making it more manageable on horseback. The new loading lever latch was a small innovation with big impact, keeping the lever secure during recoil. Surviving examples are tracked by serial number, their histories pored over by collectors and auctioneers. When one surfaces, provenance is everything. If it's tied to a Frontier legend, prices can vault past $500,000. The Whitneyville Dragoon stands as both relic and prize, a rare survivor from an age when every sidearm could tip the balance between obscurity and legend. In 1847, the Texas Rangers wanted a sidearm that could stop a charging horse or pierce enemy cover at 100 yards. Captain Sam Walker, a man who had seen too many close calls on the frontier, went to Samuel Colt with a demand for raw power, no compromises. The result was the Colt Walker, a revolver that didn't just push the limits, it shattered them. Each chamber could swallow up to 60 grains of black powder, nearly twice what later revolvers dared to hold. That meant a bullet could rip through wood, flesh, and bone with terrifying force. But there was a catch. The Walker's cylinder was made from wrought iron, not steel, and the quality control of the day just couldn't keep up. Stories spread of cylinders bursting in the shooter's hand, sending shards of metal flying. Out of about 1,100 Walkers made, fewer than 200 have survived. Soldiers learned fast. With this much power, every shot was a gamble. Still, for those who carried one, the Walker was the ultimate hand cannon, legendary for its brute force, and infamous for the price it sometimes demanded. Number 2. The Colt Single Action Army, better known as the Peacemaker. When the U.S. Army made this its official sidearm in 1873, it wasn't just picking a gun, it was setting a new standard for what a revolver could be. The Peacemaker fired the powerful .45 Colt cartridge, packed a balanced frame that fit perfectly in the hand, and had a reputation for going bang every time, no matter how rough the trail got. Over 500,000 of these were made by Colt, with more than 357,000 rolling out in the Old West era alone. Lawmen, outlaws, and everyone in between trusted it because it was simple, a single-action design that meant fewer moving parts, less to go wrong, and a trigger pull as crisp as a prairie morning. Its silhouette became the symbol of frontier justice, appearing in more Western movies and TV shows than any other handgun in history. From the polished holsters of sheriffs to the battered belts of cattle drovers, the Peacemaker wasn't just a tool. It was the badge of anyone staking a claim to law and order. Hollywood might have made it famous, but it earned its reputation the hard way, out on the frontier, where reliability was the only thing that mattered. Number 1. The LeMat Revolver. Nothing else from the Old West came close to the firepower packed into this Confederate showpiece. The LeMat was a true oddity. 9 shots in the main cylinder, each ready to fire .42 or .36 caliber lead, wrapped around a secret weapon. A smoothbore, 20-gauge shotgun barrel running right down the center. With a flick of the hammer's selector lever, a gunfighter could switch from revolver to shotgun in a heartbeat. That meant 9 bullets for the standoff, then a blast of buckshot if things got desperate. Confederate officers like General P.G.T. Beauregard and Lieutenant J.B. Stuart carried LeMats into battle, trusting that extra punch when the odds turned ugly. Diaries from the cavalry tell of moments when one pull of the shotgun trigger cleared a path through chaos. Shock and awe all in one hand. Only about 3,000 LeMats were ever made, most smuggled through blockades or handed out as gifts to favored officers. Today, finding one with a true Civil War pedigree is almost impossible. The LeMat's brutal mix of innovation and intimidation puts it at the very top. A revolver that rewrote the rules of survival and left a legend that collectors still chase. Of the more than 166,000 Colt 1877 Thunderers produced, only a fraction survive today, a testament to both their popularity and the harsh realities of frontier life. This countdown has revealed how each revolver, whether made for speed, power, or reliability, shaped the Old West, from the mass-issued Colt 1860 Army to the ultra-rare LeMat revolver with its unique shotgun barrel. While production records and battlefield diaries document the evolution of design and deadly effectiveness, many questions remain. The precise number of each model still existing, and the full stories behind every weapon carried by figures like John Wesley Hardin or Buffalo Bill. Today, collectors seek out these revolvers not just for their rarity, but for the history they represent. The legacy of these firearms endures in museums, auction houses, and historical records, reminding us that survival and reputation in the Old West often depended on the revolver at a person's side.